Today on Retire with Purpose, can and should you take risk with your life savings, how to help your children and grandchildren pay for their college tuition, and how to get safety and growth at the lowest cost.
Are you prepared to retire with purpose? To retire knowing your savings is invested to meet unavoidable needs and expenses.
It's not how much we make during the good times, it's how much we keep during those really bad times.
Certified financial planner Casey Weade is president of Howard Bailey, an advisory firm that believes successful retirement begins with a detailed financial plan personalized to help achieve your life's purpose.
Whatever risk you faced, we've got a plan.
The Howard Bailey team is committed to practical financial planning so you can enjoy family and the future without uncertainty or stress. Stay tuned and learn how you too can retire with purpose.
Good to see you again. I am Lee Kelso here with Casey Weade, certified financial planner and the president of Howard Bailey Financial. You know, the financial world is just filled with a bunch of crazy abbreviations, but there's one that's very important that you understand, CAN. What makes that so important?
Well, I think this is a little bit more helpful for people than most of the acronyms that are out there. IRA, ETF, we have all these different acronyms, and for understanding purposes and really understanding our risk and if we can take risk when it comes to our life savings, and as we step into retirement, this is an incredibly important thing to understand. Can we take the risk? And that's what this acronym helps us figure out. Can we take the risk? It's based on capacity for the risk, attitude towards the risk, and the need for the risk in the first place. On the way to retirement, it's all been about accumulation, and risk has kind of been something that we said, not a big deal. I don't need the money for 20 or 30 years, so I can make up the losses, and you're not going to panic. You have the capacity for the risk. You most likely have the need for the risk if you're in the 99% of individuals that are out there saving for retirement. But as you step into retirement, the idea changes. It's no longer about offense. Now it's about defense, and the mistakes that are made, especially based on risk, can quickly force you back into the workforce. It can force you out of retirement. And that's not those are just not the kind of conversations we want to be having with the families we work with.
Okay, so capacity, attitude, and need are the three letters we're really talking about. So let's dig deep into capacity. How do you help us figure out capacity?
Yeah, well, when it comes to capacity, that just means, do we have the ability to handle the risk in the first place? Can our portfolio take the risk? And that means, for instance, let's say you had $10 million and you needed $20,000 in annual income. Well, you could probably bury the money in the backyard, take $20,000 out every single year, and the money would last for the rest of your life. So you have the capacity for the risk, because even if that 10 million went down to 5 million, well, you could still probably keep it in the backyard and draw that income every single year out of it, and it would last the rest of your life. Now, when we look at someone that maybe has $200,000 and they need to draw $20,000 out every single year from that portfolio, well, they really can't afford that $200,000 to go down to $100,000. They don't have the capacity for the risk. The problem is that these things are kind of opposed. When we have the capacity, we don't necessarily have the need. When we don't have the capacity, we have the need. And that's why we also need to focus in on something called attitude.
Yeah, and if you're that guy who's got 10 million buried in the backyard, chances are you don't have the attitude for risk, right?
That's right. And I meet a lot of people that are in that position. I've got a gentleman that retired from taking a lot of risk during his working career. He owned businesses, he owned real estate, and he was used to taking risk. He was just fed up with it. He didn't want to have to go through it anymore. And so he said, I know I have the capacity, but I don't want to deal with it. I don't have the attitude anymore for the risk. So just put me someplace safe, give me 3 to 5%, and don't lose. And I'll be perfectly happy. I'll have enough money to last the rest of my life, and I'll never have to worry about it. And I can live my purpose. And for him, that meant starting a church, spending time with his grandkids. It wasn't for some. They just love the market. They love risk. They love trading. There's day traders that we work with, that just love buying and selling all day long, trading options. It's fun for them. They have the attitude for it. And so that's the second thing we want to evaluate is, do you have the attitude? Are you going to panic the next time we have a 2008? The next time we have a major pullback in the market, 10%, 20%? What's your uncle point? At what point are you going to push that liquidate button and maybe never get back to even because you sold out at the wrong time? So we have to identify what your attitude is as well as what your capacity is.
So need is the third one that we need to pay attention to. And how can you help me figure out what my need is going to be?
Yeah, well, when it comes to need, we need to figure out, do we have the need for the risk? And so when we look at having that need, some people really have the need. Let me walk you through a couple examples. I've got a gentleman that retired from BF Goodrich. We implemented a plan for probably 4 or 5 years ago now. And when he came in, I'll never forget it, because he pulled out his statement and he said, I've never really looked at my statement. Before I came in, I opened it up and there was $1 million there. Had no idea I was a millionaire. And there was $1 million in his 401k plan. And so we started evaluating the different levels of risk: capacity, attitude, need. And one, he had the capacity for the risk. He had $1 million. He had a decent Social Security benefit, some pension income. So he only needed about $25,000 a year from $1 million. And so it's 2.5% a year. We could just throw that into a fixed account and take income every year, and it would last the rest of his life. He had capacity for it, but he didn't have the attitude. He said, I never want to look at CNBC ever again, or hear on the radio the market's down 600 points, or that sign on 24 that says it's down 500 points. I never want to see that ever again the rest of my life. It causes me stress. I want to be able to sit on the beach and sip on my Mai Tai while everybody else might be calling the broker and hitting the panic button. I want to know I'm going to be okay. And if there's less left over for the kids, that's okay. I just want to know I'm never going to run out of money. He didn't have the attitude, and he was someone that didn't have the need. He didn't have the attitude, he didn't have the need, but he had the capacity for the risk. And this is one of the rules of thumb we used. We have 2 out of these 3 things. And he didn't have 2 out of the 3, so he didn't take the risk. Now, on the other side, we also run into people that don't have the 2 out of the 3, and then we have to make a decision. And so we had another couple that we worked with that had about $700,000 saved for retirement, but they wanted almost $50,000 a year in income. So that's about a 7% annual withdrawal. Well, we're going to have to take some risk. So, but he really didn't have the capacity for the risk. It was borderline capacity, but didn't really have a tremendous amount of capacity for the risk. Didn't have the attitude for the risk, but he absolutely had the need for that risk. And what we ended up saying is, what do we want to do here? Do we want to change the goal? Do we want to push back retirement? Do we want to save more and put more away? Do we want to reduce our income? Or do we want to say, go ahead and take the risk? And he was when he said, I don't want to push it back. I don't want to work anymore. Life's too short, and I'm willing to take the risk that maybe I have to cut my expenses at some point in the future. So we went ahead and we took the risk. And one of the tools we use to help people really figure out their capacity for the risk is we'll put together a retirement strategy. We'll take their attitude and their risk profile, we'll plug it in there using existing holdings. We can stress test their portfolio and see what would happen if we had a down market, or if we had lackluster returns for the next 10 years, if we experienced a major downturn based on that risk profile. When we evaluate their attitude, we use a risk tool called Riskalyze. And Riskalyze is a Nobel Prize winning tool that helps you identify what your risk capacity is, okay, and what your attitude, I guess I should say, towards risk is. What is that downside point at which you'll hit your uncle point? And they give you a number between 0 and 100, and you can actually go. We'll allow you to use that tool for free on our website at retirewithpurpose.com. Just scroll down and click that stress test of my portfolio, and we can see your attitude and compare it with your portfolio. When it comes to need, I like to do this very simply. Sometimes that good old financial calculator, I tell every single advisor, I'm surprised when I meet an advisor that I've hired that doesn't use a financial calculator. So, well, that's the first thing you have to learn how to use, because it's so important, such a simple tool. We'll sit down and say, okay, we've got X amount of dollars. If we put this in a 3% fixed account, would it last the rest of your life? We could get 4% today in a fixed annuity, maybe even a CD for that matter, believe it or not. Would 3 or 4% give you enough money to last the rest of your life? And if it does, then we really don't have the need for the risk. So there's different ways we evaluate each one of these things when it comes to your unique situation.
And if you'd like to be one of the folks who enjoy the benefits of having that analysis in the hands of a professional, I hope you'll pick up the phone and call the number on the screen now before the end of the program and request a complimentary review of your retirement situation. That CAN analysis is what you're going to undergo. We'll take a look for fees and expenses you might be paying that you don't really have to. We'll take a look at risk in your portfolio and then, of course, analyze what is your attitude and your need. All important things you need to know to plan for a successful retirement. So call the number on your screen before the end of the program. Make that appointment and sit down with a member of the Howard Bailey team for a complimentary retirement review. It is time well spent to understand your situation. Can you take the risk? All right, when we come back, we're going to be answering questions from viewers, so stay with us.
At Howard Bailey Financial, every dollar has a purpose. We call it the purpose-based retirement. A certified financial planner will help you decide what you need your retirement money to do for you. We put together a written plan that puts your dollars exactly where you want them to be. And we put every dollar to work to maximize your retirement efficiency. For a higher level of insight and care, choose the purpose-based retirement from Howard Bailey Financial. Call us now to set a complimentary consultation.
Time to put Casey to work answering some of your questions. We begin with Greg up in South Bend.
I would like to set up a college fund for my grandchildren, but I'm not sure I like the stipulations of the 529 plan. So are there any other valid options?
Well, Greg, that's a good question. It's one that a lot of people ask because they're not sure if their kid's going to end up going to college in the first place, or their grandkids going to end up in a college institution for that matter. But one of the new things that you can do with the 529 is you can use it for private school education on their way to college. But in all likelihood, if they're going to private school, they're probably going to college. And so you might want to evaluate some other options. I use a 529 plan, and that is our main source for college funding, because in the state of Indiana, believe it or not, that the plan that we have here in the state is the best 529 plan in the country when it comes to the tax advantages that you get for making contributions to the College Choice 529 plan. And one of the things I would say, if you're going to make contributions to College Choice, go direct. You don't have to go through an advisor to make contributions to a College Choice 529 plan. You can go direct to the institution. They've got great service. You don't need an advisor to help you choose allocations. It's very easy to do over the phone and on your own, and you can avoid a lot of unnecessary fees and expenses by doing so. We tell all of our clients to do that and go direct. If you go with the state 529 plan, you get a 20% tax credit up to $5,000. So that's a pretty good chunk of change, and it might even justify the risk of not using those dollars in the future, especially if you take that extra 20% you're getting every year for those contributions, and you could take it and pour it back into the plan. You could take that extra 20% and move it into a Roth IRA for that matter. Maybe you're putting $5,000 into a 529, $1,000 into a Roth IRA, because Roth IRAs also make really good alternatives to a 529 plan. If you look at utilizing a Roth IRA, you can take distributions from a Roth IRA prior to the age of 59 and a half, avoid penalties as long as you were using those for qualified educational expenses, much like you would a 529. You just don't get that tax credit that you get, that state tax credit that you get for the 529 plan. And so that's kind of the difference between the Roth IRA, the 529. I would, for the most part, avoid Coverdale education savings accounts, but there are also some institutions out there that will let you prepay for tuition, and that can be a good way to reduce your expenses. This is kind of similar to maybe something you're more accustomed to, or maybe you're more familiar with, which would be prepaying funeral expenses, where you're locking in tuition rates at, say, today's rate, while they might be increasing at 5 or 6% per year. So that might be a good thing to do. Maybe a combination of all three of those different options. And I've also helped people that are saving for their grandchildren and putting away dollars for them, and they've sometimes chose to make contributions to a cash value life insurance policy that they hope to see similar returns like they might with a 529 or a Roth IRA, and then they can take loans and use the cash value for college tuition when their children get there. And if something happens to those grandparents before the kids actually go to college and they don't get it fully funded, then they've got a death benefit that the children can use for college funding. So there's just a lot of different options, and I think you need to evaluate all of them.
Thomas in Huntington has a question about bond funds.
When does it make sense to buy a bond fund instead of an individual bond?
Well, Tom, that's a good question to be asking yourself. In a rising interest rate environment, as bonds will lose value, their price will go down as interest rates go up. And this is a good time to look at alternatives to a bond fund. If you have a smaller pot of dollars that you aren't able to buy individual bonds, then you may want to look into going ahead and buying ETFs or buying mutual funds that are bond funds, but look at very short duration bond funds. So very short duration, the shorter the term, the less they will be affected by interest rate movements. If you have a large portfolio, so let's say you have a $500,000 or $1 million portfolio, or even $300,000 or $400,000 you're allocating to fixed income, and you're thinking about putting that in bonds or bond funds, you may want to look into buying individual bonds. And I think better yet, there's been some great research. Dr. Weade, one of the leading retirement income experts in the country, we interviewed him on our Retire with Purpose podcast, and he said, and he's put out some great articles on this, that today, and there's been some Yale professors that have done studies on this, that it might be a better option for you to use a fixed annuity or a fixed indexed annuity instead of a bond for that fixed income allocation, where you can get better principal protection, better interest rate risk protection, and give you an alternative, maybe just a diversifier. There's been some argument out there that you might want to have some allocations to bonds and bond funds or individual bonds, and also diversifying some into a fixed annuity or an indexed annuity.
All right, let's answer an email question, which you can ask at info@howardbailey.com. Do you ever see the use of mutual funds over exchange-traded funds? Asks Rhonda from Pearston.
Well, in reality, and honestly, Rhonda, I don't see a lot of places where we see a use of a mutual fund over an ETF. Most ETFs can accomplish what a mutual fund can do in a more tax efficient and a lower cost manner than you're going to find a mutual fund. However, one of the areas that we tend to use them is in our large cap allocations, most specifically U.S. large cap allocations, where we have concerns over an index bubble today. As we have seen Warren Buffett and John Bogle say, well, just put it in the Vanguard Total Stock Market Fund, or just throw it in the SPY or the S&P 500 indexed fund. We have seen a lot of dollars being thrown into these, and they go to the largest companies first. They go to what's called the FANG stocks first, and these companies are getting bigger and bigger, creating a potential bubble in some of these indexed funds that are concentrated in some of these really large companies that are out there. And this is where we might use a DFA fund or a dimensional fund advisors fund that's focused on value investing in those U.S. sectors. So you want to make sure that maybe you want to use a mutual fund from time to time, but I don't think there's a lot of uses for them, and know why you're using it. I think anytime you ever use any financial vehicle, you need to know the reason why you're using it. And if you don't know the reason why you're using that particular investment, might be time to get a second opinion.
And let's make it easy for you to do just that. Pick up the phone, call the number on your screen right now before the end of the program, and you can request a meeting with a member of the Howard Bailey team. It's pretty simple to do. Just give us a call. We'll work out the calendar details. You'll bring in some documents, and we'll do a complimentary retirement review to find out exactly what is in your portfolio, how many mutual funds are looking there with taxes and fees you might not necessarily have to be paying. Is there risk in your portfolio that could really hurt you in the case of a market downturn? What about a lifetime income that you can't outlive? Is there a provision for that in your portfolio? There could be. We'll help you find it. Call the number on your screen right now before the end of the program and meet with the Howard Bailey advisor and start that complimentary review of your retirement situation. It is an important step toward retiring with purpose. Let's get to our question of the day, and it has to do with which one of these vehicles is a true investment. We have the answer coming up.
At Howard Bailey Financial, every dollar has a purpose. We call it the purpose-based retirement. A certified financial planner will help you decide what you need your retirement money to do for you. We put together a written plan that puts your dollars exactly where you want them to be. And we put every dollar to work to maximize your retirement efficiency. For a higher level of insight and care, choose the purpose-based retirement from Howard Bailey Financial. Call us now to set a complimentary consultation.
Let's check in with you on your answer on our question of the day. We asked, which of these is legitimately an investment? Casey?
Well, Lee, I think most people think of most of these things as investments, whether that's a variable annuity or an indexed annuity or a certificate of deposit for that matter. We think of a CD as an investment. It's paying us interest each and every year. But the reality is CDs, fixed index annuities, they have principal guarantees, so they're not regarded as an investment. When you look at variable annuities, they are regarded as an investment because you can lose value to your principal. Now, when you look at life insurance, not regarded as an investment, it's a risk management tool. We don't look at the cash value as an investment. Typically, we look at the death benefit as something that's going to protect our loved ones. So obviously not an investment, but we can look at these other vehicles as investments like a variable annuity, anything that can go down in value. A fixed index annuity, not so. But there's a lot of confusion when it comes to annuities, and especially fixed index annuities versus variable annuities. What are we looking at? Which one is which? Is this an investment? Is it not? And what we're going to try to do here today is we're going to kind of walk you through the similarities and differences that you're going to find with a fixed index annuity versus a variable annuity. We'll also walk you through a case study of a variable annuity that we reviewed and ended up moving into a fixed index annuity to eliminate some costs and improve some benefits for those couples. So now we have the similarities. The first similarity is that they're both issued by an insurance company. So both of these are annuities. They're both issued by an insurance company, and there's riders that you can add to these products that give you an income guarantee, that give you a lifetime income you can't outlive, much like your pension for that matter. Then there's death benefit riders you might want to apply to these things to give you a guaranteed growth rate on your value that your heirs can use in the event something were to happen to you. And usually there's a free withdrawal that'll allow you to take 5 to 10% out every year without a penalty. And lastly, they are treated as tax-deferred vehicles, so you're not going to be taxed on your annual gains. When you have CDs and you have interest that you earn throughout the year, you receive a 1099 that you have to file, you have to pay taxes on. It reduces your net return. When you look at an annuity, it is staying tax deferred as long as we're not taking those distributions throughout the year. We're not utilizing our free withdrawal every year, and that can improve our net rate of return over time. So let's talk about some of the differences next. When we look at the differences between these two accounts, the first one, and I think the most glaring one, which is what makes a variable annuity an investment, a fixed index annuity not an investment, is that there's risk to principal when it comes to a variable annuity. Your principal's insured with a fixed indexed annuity, and where those dollars are actually invested. When it comes to a variable annuity, you're actually investing in mutual funds. You're investing in ETFs. When you look at a fixed indexed annuity, you're not investing directly into the market, but your returns are linked to some type of market interest rate vehicle, such as the Russell 3000, the Dow Jones Industrial Average, the S&P 500. So your return is going to improve if the market does go up, but your principal is still insured. When we talk about fees, one of the things that variable annuities are really getting beat up about all the time is their high fees and expenses. And these typically range anywhere from 2 to 5%. I've seen fees higher than that. I've seen fees lower than that. When it comes to fixed indexed annuities, you can have a fixed indexed annuity without any fee, but you can apply riders to these vehicles for income or death that might be 0 up to 1%. I've seen some fees as high as 1.5% a year. The term on a variable annuity is typically shorter, of 6 to 8 years versus 8 to 12 years with a fixed indexed annuity. Comparing these things side by side, we see that our principal is at risk with a variable annuity, guaranteed and insured with a fixed indexed annuity, invested in the market with a variable annuity, not invested in the market with a fixed indexed annuity. We have death benefits or income riders we can add to both. We have higher fees in a variable annuity than we have with a fixed indexed annuity, shorter term with a variable annuity, longer term with a fixed fixed indexed annuity. Similar free withdrawal amounts we can take out each year, and they both stay tax deferred. So what I'm going to do now is walk you through a case study so you can really start to peel back the layers and see what's inside of these types of vehicles. And we're going to start with a variable annuity. This is a $200,000 variable annuity that we audited, and the first thing we wanted to take a look at is what are we paying for this vehicle? And the first fee that every variable annuity have is something called a mortality and expense charge. They all come with a charge for death benefit, essentially. That's that mortality expense, and that is 1% per year on this account, 1.25% for an income rider, and the mutual funds cost 1.68% a year, bringing the total cost to 4.2% per year, $8,500 per year. Some of these charges were being applied against a larger value, which was the income value. And the income value was $250,000. The cash value was $200,000 due to the actual annual fees and expenses. During a very good period of time in the market, the cash value only grew at about 2% per year. The income guarantee was growing at about 7.2% a year, but they could only actually access $10,000 per year. That's one of the big problems with people that own variable annuities, really the people that sell variable annuities, is they don't explain that you can't just take that $250,000 and walk away with it. You have to take $10,000 per year in this case. So if they're 60 years old, by the time they're 70, they've collected $100,000 out of this account. By the time they're 80, they've broken even and collected $200,000 and finally got ahead of the game by the time they're 90 and got $300,000 out of this account. There's probably nothing left in the actual cash value depending on market returns. So what's the rate of return that we're effectively getting on these dollars as we get this income? If we have $200,000, we get $10,000 a year. At age 70, we've taken a loss. Age 80, we've broken even. And age 90, that means we would have had to invest that $200,000 and earn 4% a year in order to get $300,000 in income over that same period of time. What we ended up doing is we took that cash value, because this couple, they didn't need income. They wanted to have an account that provided them with some security, knowing that they would have principal protection and they would most likely leave it to their heirs, so they wanted to evaluate death benefits. We took that $200,000, put it in an account that gave us principal protection, 40% of the participation in the S&P 500. S&P went up 10%, they would get 4. If it went up 30%, they would end up getting 12% and would lock in those gains every single year. They had a minimum guaranteed return of 3% for death benefit purposes, and they would get 2 times the returns every single year that credited to the cash value. So if we went up 4% here, that means we credited 8% to the death benefit, and we got a 10% bonus. And there wasn't a fee. So we took their fee from over 4% down to 0 and put them into a vehicle that had much better benefits for their specific purpose. One of the biggest issues is not identifying what that purpose is before you buy that vehicle and buying it on fear and greed instead of for the right reasons.
So if you're not really sure what you need in your retirement plan, here's an opportunity to get a good independent analysis. So call the number on your screen right now before the end of the program, which is just a few seconds away, and we'll get you on the calendar for a meeting with a member of the Howard Bailey team, an independent advisor to help you understand risk in your portfolio, fees and taxes you might not have to pay, provisions for long-term care, and a lifetime income you can't outlive. All very important things we'll cover in a complimentary retirement review when you call the number on your screen and sit down with a member of the Howard Bailey team and put yourself on the course toward retiring with purpose. That's what we're all about, and we will see you next week. You take care.